Hello and welcome to the Warp News Show. Today we're going to talk about food or innovation in food, food technology or food tech for short. And food is obviously very important for humans, but behind that obviously importance lies another very important question, a debate rather about actually about humanity or humanity's role here on Earth. Our whole existence. How should we view that existence? And that is those two sides sort of in the debate is summarized in the title of this book, The Wizard and the Prophet by Charles C. Mann. You should definitely read it if you haven't. And the one side are the prophets, and in this book represented by William Vogt. And William Vogt, he sort of he laid the intellectual foundation for big parts of the environmental movement that we see, the global environmental movement. He's sort of the intellectual backbone of that movement. Not all parts of it, not everyone agrees with his views, but he's had a huge impact on that movement. And his thesis was that Earth has a carrying capacity, so it could only carry a certain amount of people and animals and feed them. And if we go beyond that or above that carrying capacity, catastrophe will follow. So we will destroy Earth. We will, and then of course destroy humanity and nature and all animals as well. So we should retreat, sort of move backwards and keep inside of that carrying capacity. We should not try to increase the carrying capacity. And that's the other perspective in this debate. But since Vogt formulated this theory in the 40s and the 50s, we have gone way beyond that carrying capacity. There are much more people here on Earth now than then, and much more than Vogt thought was possible. And yes, there are big environmental problems, but we have not seen that huge catastrophe. We've seen undernourishment and starvation gone way down in the last few decades. We have more calories than ever before to eat in the Western world, but also in poorer parts of the world. So how is that? How come? And of course, that is because of innovation. We've innovated in food and in agriculture and in many other ways. Of course, since the 40s and the 50s, we've innovated. We've increased the carrying capacity of Earth. And that's, like I said, that's the other perspective in this title represented by the wizards. And the person representing the wizard in this book is Norman Borlaug. And Borlaug wanted, and we're going to talk much more about him, but Borlaug wanted to increase the carrying capacity of Earth by innovation. So in his case, in food innovation. So we're going to talk more about this debate and about Norman Borlaug. And Borlaug was supported in his work by the Rockefeller Foundation. And our guest today, Daniel Rubin, he works as a consultant for the Rockefeller Foundation in their food team. He's also advisor to 3 food tech accelerators and 9 food tech startups, and he's also invested in some of them. So you can imagine, and you're going to see soon, that he's very knowledgeable in this food tech area. And you will see that also if you sign up for his newsletter. He has a weekly newsletter about food tech that is called FoodTech Weekly, and you can sign up for that on his homepage. You see the URL somewhere down here. I really recommend it. It's always funny. He's very fun, but it's also very informative. So I know you're gonna love it. I do. So please sign up for that. My first question to him will be, of all the interesting, exciting things going on in food tech, what is the most interesting? What is the most exciting? What excites him the most? But before we let him answer that, I'm going to tell you very briefly about Warp News. So Warp News is part of the Warp Institute, and our mission is to make people more optimistic about the future of humanity and our society. And we do that by creating and sharing fact-based optimistic news and content like this. We do that in part to counter all the pessimism and the huge negative bias we see in a lot of other news media. So if you want to support our work, you could become a premium supporter or a WIP, a Warp Important Person. So it's VIP with a W. So just head to our website, warpinstitute.org or warpinstitute.se, and you can sign up there and try it for a month for free. Daniel, for one, is one of those WIPs. So definitely sign up and try it. It would be awesome to have you on board. And with that, let's welcome Daniel Rubin to the Warp News Show. Welcome, Daniel.
Thank you, Mathias. It's good to be here.
So let's start with that question I just mentioned. So of all the interesting, exciting things going on in food tech, a broad, big area, what are you most excited about right now?
I'm excited about a lot of things, but I think the most fascinating thing going on right now is the disruption of agriculture, because it will just change the world in so many ways. The way we produce meat and dairy and egg and other animal-derived products is about to change big time. So that's really fascinating, this kind of impact it's going to have.
Yeah, we're going to go in a little bit more about precisely about that a little bit later. But I don't have the kind of knowledge you have in this area. But for me, that is also, especially meat without meat, meatless meat. That's very exciting in so many aspects. Like I said, we'll go into that. But it's such a big part of our society. So it's not just something. It's not just that you eat it for nutrition, but it's also a big part of our society, and I think that could really be changing now. So, good choice based on my much less knowledge in this field. But tell us a little bit more about yourself. How did you end up in food tech?
Sure. So I'm not from a farm. I did not study agriculture. I actually did business school in Denmark and law school in Sweden. And I worked 5 years with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Denmark, helping Danish tech companies to internationalize, because I always loved technology and what it can enable. And I ended up in New York and was really fascinated by tech for social impact. So I got a scholarship to go to Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., and I went there and focused on how we can leverage technology for social impact. And I really started to geek out about agriculture and food and all the sort of low-hanging fruit, pardon the pun. So after graduating and working for the World Bank and a bit of other things, I ended up working as a consultant for the food team of the Rockefeller Foundation. And I'm still there supporting them. And on the side of that, as you mentioned, I'm also mentored a couple of food tech accelerators around the world, like Big Idea Ventures in New York, Catapult Ocean in Oslo, and Bloomer Accelerators in Sweden, and an advisor to 9 or 10 really interesting ag tech and food tech startups in Europe and US that in various ways are trying to change and reshape the food system as we know it.
Okay, before we sort of head into the future, let's go back in history a little bit, where I started this with Norman Borlaug. I mentioned William Vogt, but let's talk about Norman Borlaug. So the wizard in this title, and he also worked for or were supported by the Rockefeller Foundation. So can you tell us a little bit about Norman Borlaug, who he was?
Sure. So he actually studied agriculture. He was an agronomist, and he was a staff scientist for the Rockefeller Foundation, and he was part of the core team whose work in Mexico in the 1940s onwards, and later on in India and Pakistan in the 50s and 60s, led to a huge boost in agricultural productivity, and it was credited with saving 1 billion people from starvation, essentially. And this became known as the Green Revolution, and Borlaug was also awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1970 for his contributions. So it was a mix of high yield, disease resistant wheat varieties and corn/maize varieties. Plus, of course, you added fertilizer and irrigation and machinery, and this had a huge impact on the world's ability to feed itself. Because before, a lot of these countries had to import food, and after the Second World War, as you mentioned, we had a huge issue around undernourishment. 50% perhaps of the world's population were undernourished. Today it's about 10%, maybe a bit higher due to COVID. So around 800 million people are undernourished, but we're sort of winning that battle against eradicating hunger. And that's a huge achievement given how long time humanity has been around, and that we can eradicate hunger in our generation.
Exactly. Maybe Max, our producer here in the background, maybe you can put up that we have a couple of slides on that. So,
yes, so here you can actually see that we haven't really expanded the land area used for growing cereals, but we really increased the production of cereals, increased much faster than the rate of population increase. So as a natural effect, we've been able to push down undernourishment pretty much everywhere. So it's been a huge achievement. Of course, there's also been issues created by this huge increase in production. There's environmental issues, there's dietary issues, and as all problems, they're solvable through innovation and technology and better policy and so on. So these problems are solvable, and the food system, I think, is about to change more in the next few decades than it has changed over the last couple of thousand years. So it's a very exciting time to be alive.
Exactly, and for me, when I heard about sort of these statistics a few years ago, I actually was in my previous life, I was in politics, and on the municipal level, then we were debating should we turn this area this used for agriculture, should that be something else? I don't remember what it was, if it was a road or something. And then I checked out these statistics and I realized, okay, we like we can see here, the land use have not increased, or just a tiny amount. It has increased over the few decades, and we're producing much more food. So that really stood out, because it's easy to think, okay, we're producing much more food, so we need equally much more land use, but that's not the case, like you said, through innovation. So it's quite a kind of fantastic progress. But of course, there are still big problems in this area in food in general. Some people eat too much, especially in the Western world, in Europe and in the US, of course, eat too much and maybe also the wrong food in many cases. And some people still eat too little, and we also have some emissions coming from the animals and agriculture in general. But like you said, and that's the very important part of being a fact-based optimist. It's that you see the facts of the world. So you don't deny there's a problem if there is a problem. You don't try to put a positive spin on the problem, but it's solvable. You can solve these things through innovation. We were in that case, we're in the wizard camp here. So let's go. Let's go back to the future a little bit and look at these things that are going on right now. There are very many things that we could be going on for several hours, but we're gonna just go through a few of them. And let's start with the meat, like we talked about before. And it's not just meat, but let's focus mostly on meat here. So. Max, if you put up the next slide there, we have the Impossible Whopper. It's an Impossible Burger. They have a lot of these kind of names, Impossible or Beyond Meat and things like that. So tell us about meatless meat and what's going on there.
Yeah, so the whole idea of replacing animals is basically, people love these foods that come from animals, meat and dairy and egg and all the products we can get from animals. And humanity has always used animals, right, as machinery, as transportation, as protection, as companions, and so on. But animals were usually replaced by technology. So we don't use, pigeons to carry letters, or we don't use horses anymore to travel around because the T-Ford came. And there's this idea that people really love meat and dairy and egg. But we also see that the current animal farming system is basically 1.5 billion cows on Earth, and tens of billions of chickens and pigs, and of course hundreds of billions of fish if you want to count them. And raising all these animals for food takes a lot of environmental resources. So that's one issue. There's also some concerns about certain types of meat, like processed meats, that they have negative health impacts. And of course, there's this animal welfare concern from some people as well. So there's this push to develop products that can give people what they want in terms of their whole meat or dairy and egg experience, the price, the taste, the convenience of these products, but produce them in different ways. So sort of turn cows into pets, essentially. And there are two main tracks here. There are the plant-based products, plant-based meat and dairy and egg, and Impossible Whopper and Beyond, or Impossible Foods and Beyond Meat are two great examples of that. Oatly for oat milk, another. Just Egg for eggs is another plant-based. So these products are on the market. Then, if we look a couple of years into the future, we have these cultured proteins, which will hit the market, both meat and dairy and egg and other types of proteins that are actually grown in bioreactors, sort of like brewing beer. This is already how we produce insulin for diabetics, or rennet for cheese, vanillin. So we already produce these products in bioreactors. So what's new is that we're learning how to master how to produce other types of proteins, like casein and whey, which Perfect Day Foods in the Bay Area is doing, and they're just released this ice cream brand. Tastes like real dairy ice cream, but it's not. We didn't need to milk cows to get this dairy. So, but these are a couple of years away. What's new with, of course, Impossible Meat and Beyond is they're really doing a great job of mimicking the whole experience of eating meat, and that's why they have so much traction in terms of retail presence and also restaurant presence. They're available in tens of thousands of outlets, and as you see in this picture, sometimes there's some mishaps in terms of product presentation. But there's no denying that
in your last email, I thought it was really funny, and I saw. I think it was Gunhild Stordalen. She tweeted or Instagrammed this image and said, "Don't worry, Beyond Meat. It could happen to anyone."
Yeah, Gunhild is, of course, a thought leader and leader of the EAT Foundation in Norway. So there's this huge push now to get these products to market. A lot of these companies have raised billions of dollars. They're expanding in retail, in restaurants. They're starting to deliver directly to consumers. So it's still just a very tiny fraction of the market. But there's no denying that I think a growing part of the population will choose these products for various reasons, whether it's environmental reasons or animal welfare reasons or nutrition reasons. But some people will elect to eat these products instead of the animal-derived products, and that has a lot of implications for society, for farmers, for meat processing, for the entire supply chain, for the environment, for nutritional impact, and so on. So it's fascinating from a lot of aspects.
It definitely is, and I think I've tasted a few of these plant-based ones, and they're really, really good. I really like them, but I also really like meat. I'm a little bit of a hypocrite because I don't think you should just raise animals and kill them and eat them, but I still do it, even if I decrease that a little bit. But if there are alternatives like plant-based meat, or the other one that I'm really looking forward to, like you mentioned, that you actually grow meat. And just to clarify, that is real meat. It doesn't happen to be on a cow before it ended up on your plate. That is real meat, right?
Yeah, you take essentially a tissue sample, a cell sample from an animal, and then you can grow it in a bioreactor. So you sort of trick the cells that they're still in a human or an animal body, but you can grow any type of cell, really. There are companies culturing breast milk. There are companies doing milk and meat, and also gelatin, collagen. There's all sorts of innovations happening, but they will likely be even closer to what meat lovers desire and crave. And the hypothesis for all this VC money going into this, like the billions of dollars, is that people are loyal to the whole experience of meat and dairy and egg, because what they give us in terms of taste and price and convenience and community, the sort of backyard barbecue, people love that. Mm. But most people don't love the fact that it's from a carcass of a dead animal. Some people do. Some people do like to go into the forest and hunt animals. But the majority of people they're loyal to meat, not that it's from an animal. And that's, I think, it's the whole hypothesis of these VC firms and these startups trying to replicate the experience of meat and an egg without, producing them from animals, that people are loyal to the products, but not from the fact that they're from an animal. And I guess seen that for other products in history, that, people weren't loyal to the horse, they were loyal to the ability of going from A to B. And that's when, Ford came, the horses were gone from the streets of New York within 2 decades or so, because the technology was just superior. So it's really, it's an interesting development, sort of decoupling meat from the animal. It's obviously brand new. Yeah. I totally agree. That is very exciting. It's a future I very much look forward to. So, okay, let's dive into the next one. It's not just these kind of things. There's many things in agriculture. So, give us the next slide, Max. There's this a robot. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about this robot. Yeah, there's a lot of automation happening. So the food system is being impacted and disrupted right now, both on the farm level, as well as how we process and package and distribute food, and how we consume foods. And automation is a huge trend. You have robots that can do automatic weeding or take out pests. This saves a lot of time for the farmer. There are other issues as well. It can be expensive and hard to get labor to work on the field. It's very hard work and low pay. And with border closures, whether due to political demands or to COVID, it's been hard for some farms and farmers to source the labor they need from other countries or other regions. So automation is helping to solve for that. Robots that can help weed, for example, but also help with the harvest and sort of automate on-farm production, which is pretty exciting. And we have robots, everything from drones and autonomous vehicles to robots, robot shepherds. So it's really impacting. And this is more of course, this is more of a high-income country phenomenon so far, but it's probably going to trickle down to other, low and middle income countries eventually. And as you know, Mathias, like 150 years ago, most of us worked in agriculture. Today we don't. Yet we produce much more food, and this is of course because of automation and efficiencies. And this is just going to continue. And so on-farm automation is a big trend right now.
Exactly, and like all those kind of technologies, if we start using them, they'll be cheaper, and other people can use them. But battery technology and all other parts of a robot like the one we saw is getting cheaper, so more people can use it, and then they get even cheaper. That's the beauty of this kind of technology.
And it's not only about displacing labor. It's also for environmental reasons that, you may be able to use less herbicides or pesticides or fertilizer when you're able to sort of use precision agriculture or decision agriculture, as some people call it, that these tools help farmers to farm in ways that are better for the environment. Of course, it's not always about technology. Sometimes it's just about smarter farming, row cropping, for example, regenerative agriculture. There are a lot of innovations that might not be products, but actually the way we do things, that we sort of figure out that we can actually use natural predators to knock out the predators in a greenhouse. We don't have to use pesticides. We can use spiders. So there's innovation is not always using a new shiny robot. It can be sort of the way we do things is also innovation. Exactly.
Yeah, precisely. Okay, let's dive into the next one. Going vertical farming. Tell us about this.
Yeah, so this is another trend which has been growing. So what made this possible is really cheap sensors and cheap LED lighting. This enables us to grow food in very small spaces. So maybe on 1 hectare, you can grow as much leafy greens as on 100 hectares outside, because obviously you stack them vertically. The good thing here is you can sort of reduce your water footprint pretty significantly. You don't need usually herbicides or pesticides because it's indoor. You'll always have some, pests, but you hopefully can knock them out using other methods. So it's controlled environment farming. You're not dependent on the sun or the rain. So you can grow 24/7, 365 days per year. You can grow indoor, very close to where the consumers are. So you don't have to transport it across Europe or across the US, across long distances to get food from where it's grown to where the people are. You can actually grow it very close to where the people are, which may have nutritional benefits. So you have these huge farms like Aero Farms and Plenty and other greenhouses. That's one trend. You also have the in-store farms like InFarm of Germany that are actually deploying in-farm growing modules where consumers and shoppers can pick leafy greens and microgreens straight from the shelf, and then you also have sort of the at-home systems that are smaller. And I mentioned leaves and microgreens. So far, from a profitability perspective, these companies have only sort of mastered leaf greens, lettuce and salads and kale and those kind of things, and herbs. We haven't really been able to do the staple crops like potatoes and rice and wheat in a profitable way. The most profitable sector is cannabis, but in terms of food, it's sort of leafy greens and microgreens. Maybe one day we'll get to tomatoes and strawberries and those fruits and berries in vegetables in larger quantities. But right now we're talking like leafy greens and herbs. But it's still an interesting development for various reasons. I should also mention one drawback of this technology is that it's pretty energy intensive, because if you need ventilation, you need all the LED lighting. But as you know, energy is becoming cheaper and cheaper with new technologies, so that'll be less of a concern in the future.
Yeah, exactly. And if you can use solar, for example, or wind to get the energy for that, and also it's when you're in the north, like we are in Sweden, you see the obvious benefits of being able to grow stuff year round. It's not just a few summer months that you can grow stuff. It's really year round. So smart, interesting development. We've seen a couple of projects here in Sweden. I don't know exactly where they are going, but I think in the future we'll see a lot of them, especially here in the cold, dark north.
Well, not just, I think any area with an extreme weather. So that could be the cold areas up north. It could also be the deserts. And of course, I know Warp has a space program. If you want to grow your own food on Mars, you're going to need probably vertical farms indoor, because you don't have an atmosphere. And maybe you need bioreactors to grow the meat and dairy and egg people want as well. So this technology can enable us to really become an interplanetary species.
Exactly. I think that's a very, very good point. All this we see, the benefit for us on Earth is also a benefit in space, and we're going to see when we really start sending humans to Mars and to the moon again, and on big space stations. We're going to see these kind of things, this kind of technologies really accelerating, because you see a huge demand there. You see, okay, we need to invent much faster, and that's going to help us on Earth, like space technology has always done. It's not just, you don't have to choose Earth or space. It's a benefit of both. So it's good that you brought that up. Okay, for the last item that we look into the future, we're going to watch a banana, and maybe you can play that again, Max. So on the left here, normal banana. The other one on the right, you have something else.
Yeah, and this is incredibly fascinating. So food waste is, of course, a huge problem in the food system. About 30% of food grown in poorer countries doesn't reach the consumer for various reasons. We don't have cold chain, or we don't have efficient harvesting technologies. In rich countries, 30% of food bought by consumers is wasted. So this is a huge issue. It's immoral. We need to solve it, and we can solve it. And a lot of startups and innovators are tackling this problem in different ways, both at the farm level, but also in sort of consumer-facing apps like food rescue apps and so on. This specific technology we saw, it's developed by a company in California called Apple Sciences. It's in coding of the fruits and the vegetables. So fruits and vegetables become bad because air comes in and the water goes out, essentially. And they slow down this process through a coating. So they grind organic matter like leaves, for example, and they spray this on the produce, like on avocados, or dip them. And this creates an invisible coating, which does not smell, which doesn't taste, which is organic, but it increases the shelf life 2x, 3x, 4x. Other companies like Mori and Sufresca are working on different but similar solutions. So this is, of course, a huge win, because for a consumer, you get longer lasting produce. Your avocado might not go bad, or your banana doesn't go bad as fast. Same thing for the food grocery stores and the retailers, that they can keep things for a longer time before they go bad. So it's really a win-win across the entire supply chain, that we're minimizing the amount of food waste, because it's something that we really need to solve. So it's a really fascinating technology from a lot of aspects.
Yeah, it's before we talked about this prior to this show. I've never heard about these things, and that's what I sort of I love about humanity, both with possibilities that are out there and problems that are out there. There's always a ton of people trying to solve them, and solving them. It's amazing. It's not, and it's often not just one person or one company. It's a ton of them, and they're competing a little bit. And I just love that. Okay, so for the last question, the same question as we pose in every Warp News show. Our mission for the Warp Institute and Warp News is to not sell T-shirts, but to make the future come sooner. But you can also buy it as a T-shirt, and we want these things to happen sooner. There's so much good things going on, problems that need solving, but also some huge opportunities out there. So the things we've been discussing now, and like I said, we could have had 45 more examples if you wanted on things going on. But for people watching this, what do you think, Daniel? What could they do? And by that I mean the minor things in their daily lives. What can they do to make this future come sooner? And what are the big things out there? What are the huge business opportunities or other projects they can do? What is your advice?
So I'll start with the last question. So the three big things we need to solve in the food system are to continue to increase agri-productivity in various ways. We need to reduce food waste and eliminate food waste. And we need to shift diets towards more nourishing dietary patterns. And so these problems are solvable, and innovation and technology is part of that. Your second question, what people can do, I mean, people love innovation, but they hate change. So I'd encourage people just to have an open mind. Maybe an emerging product or solution or innovation isn't right for you or your food system, your local food system, but it might be right for another one. So have an open mind and don't be dismissive about these things that are happening. The second point is to support the innovators. So if you're a legislator, don't block innovation through overregulation. If you're an investor, have the courage to take some risks. And if you're an individual, dare to try new products and solutions. And even if you have a little money to spare, you can even invest in startups, on food tech startups on various crowdfunding platforms. So I think that's my call to action, is just have an open mind and don't block innovation, but try to support innovation instead.
That's all of that, but you know, checking out crowdfunding platforms for crowdfunding investments or other kinds of sort of Kickstarter crowdfunding, that's a very good idea in general if you want to support something. It could be often is a very good things, good ideas, but it could be so semi-wacky, but it's worth the try, you know, and you lose $100 or $1,000 or whatever. Many people can afford that, and that is a very good way to supporting ideas like that. So thank you very much, Daniel, for joining the Warp News Show and for all the great work you're doing in this field. And like I said before, sign up for Daniel's newsletter, FoodTech Weekly. You'll find it on his website. So thank you, Daniel.
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure.
All right. Before we end this show, I want to tell you about the next one. It's on September 9th. It's with Johan Norberg, the author. He's coming out with a new book called Open, The Story of Human Progress. And we're going to talk about his book. He's written several best-selling books. And this is his latest one, Open, The Story of Human Progress. So on September 9th. So one good idea to not miss that is to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You might be watching this on YouTube, so you just click subscribe, or you're watching this on Facebook or LinkedIn or somewhere else. Then head to this address here below and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And you see the coming future Warp News shows and other videos we'll put up there. Also, we also have a newsletter. Like I said, sign up for Daniel's newsletter, but we also have a newsletter with fact-based optimistic news that comes once a week with 5 to 10 fact-based optimistic news from the last week. It's always nice to get a dose of optimism in your inbox. So please sign up for that, and you'll find it on warpinstitute.org or warpinstitute.se. So again, thank you very much for watching. Have a nice weekend, and make the future come sooner. Thanks. Bye.